microphone.
Welcome to Two Parents.
And a microphone.
We're the two parents.
And that is the microphone.
And that's also our qualifications to host this podcast. I'm
right.
Shante.
And I'm Chris.
And we're not gods.
Or gurus.
But we are here to have a conversation with you today through the lens of parenting.
That's right. Why don't you tell them about our conversation?
Today we're going to talk about how you are selfish.
It's going to be a long conversation.
No, really. We are going to talk about this idea of selfishness through the lens of parenting.
Yeah, it comes up a lot.
It comes up a lot.
A whole lot.
Do you feel like parenting kind of exposes the selfishness in us?
Oh, it puts a magnifying glass on the selfishness.
Yeah? Like, how?
And self-centeredness.
Well, tell me about that.
I mean, it really is, you react to something, and it doesn't quite get the effect you're looking for, and it causes you to try to think, well, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's good.
You know, because especially with kids, and as they get older, you know, they become more perceptive, they become more vocal, and they'll talk to you, or they'll talk to, you know, the other parent or whoever.
Right.
And it'll come back that they didn't quite receive it the way you thought. And so you start to think about, where did that come from? What was I thinking? What, you know, it causes all this, can cause all this self-reflection. And you do start to realize kind of how selfish you were. And like in other podcasts we've talked about, you know, how you start wanting things for them, and you really have to look at, did I want them? Or want it for them for me?
Right, yeah. I think sometimes, too, it's like how we get excited to give gifts, but it really is the excitement of how they're going to react, because it's going to validate.
There's that one, too.
It's going to validate that, like, we're good, or something like that. And I think it's, like, really shone that magnifying glass on me, where it's been like, oh my gosh, I've planned this amazing thing. I saw you.
Yeah.
And then my face begins to fall, because it's like, that's it?
Right.
I mean, I remember, like, we planned, like, this massive trip for our daughter for Christmas. And she is an older teen and loves country music. So for Christmas, because as we've said many times, we're about the experiences, we planned a Nashville trip for her. And bought her a new guitar.
Big into country music, so Nashville's huge.
So we gave her a guitar, and then with that she opened her Nashville trip, and it was like, oh, so we're going to Nashville? I'm like, what?
Right.
You know, and now that they're older, I think I can say that a little bit more. Like, what? Like, do you realize what we put into this? This is not the response I wanted.
Like, in your mind, you're thinking, oh my gosh, you guys are the best parents ever. We're going to Nashville!
Yeah, exactly. And what we got was, so does this mean we're going to Nashville? I was like, not only are we going to Nashville, but we got this tour and we got that tour, and you get this experience, and you're going to eat here. And it was like
you had to explain it to her, because she just didn't quite understand the immensity of this trip that you had planned.
And it was like, oh, cool. And I think it was at that moment, well, it wasn't just that moment. I think I've realized for a long time. But that was one of the moments that I was like, okay, maybe I'm a little selfish in this. Because while it's nice to give good gifts, I really wanted what I wanted. I wanted to receive affirmation, right?
So in that moment, you kind of realize it's not all the way about me seeing you. It's about you seeing me see you.
That's a great way to put that. Is it. That's the selfishness of parenting. I think you just like really unearthed that. It's me seeing you see me.
That's right.
Yeah, I think
I want you to see me see you.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah, I know. I've been there a whole lot.
Yeah, so I mean, I wonder, like, how does that affect how we do life? Not like just, I mean, with our children, because we're talking about this through the lens of parenting, but how does that affect how we just do life in general when it is about doing something, and wanting.
Doing it just for the purity of doing something.
Doing it for the purity of doing something, but then is there this idea of, I wanted you to notice me, though? Like, where is that? Like, how does that impact how we interact with our children in our world?
Yeah, I mean, not good a lot of the time.
Yeah. Right.
Because then if you're reacting in a way that then they can determine, their worth from your reaction. Like, oh gosh, I didn't react right.
Yeah.
Or I should have been more excited. When really you're the one that put the expectation on them in the first place.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's really good. Yeah. So we're putting an expectation on our children or maybe or
a significant other. I know I do that a lot.
Whoever it is that we're interacting with to respond a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that not only sets us up for failure, but it sets them up for failure sometimes as well. And I think the crazy thing that I know for me is it's a lot easier to do for others and without any expectation that it is to do for my family. Mm-hmm. Like a perfect stranger, I can do something.
Sure.
I don't expect anything from them. I don't care if they see me.
Yeah.
But it is this idea of, man, do you know how much work that I put into that thing, and I didn't even really get a thank you, and it hurts at some level. Mm-hmm. I think it hurts because of the closeness of the relationship, one, but you are right, like this expectation, like we've set an expectation, because I love you, and I see things this way, then you're supposed to do that in return.
And that expectation is just in our minds. It's nowhere else.
Right.
We haven't put that out into the ethos to say, this is how I want you to, it's just right here in the mind.
Right. But saying that, and that is true, it's not like, hey guys, we're going to give you something and I need you to be really excited about it.
Right.
Like we don't even give them that,
right.
you know. But it has been a running joke in our family in the last several years about reality versus how mom thought it was going to go.
Yes.
So that has been this, like, I will plan things and, like, I want to have this family time and, you know, I want, like, this, I don't know, like...
Cell phones down, everyone to be fully engaged,
like
laughing,
you actually
joking.
Laughing at what I say when I'm dropping wisdom, you're all leaned in.
Asking tons of questions about what we're doing and having conversations that just never end.
Mom, how do you feel about that? Give me your input. And it doesn't go that way.
No.
Like, hardly ever does it go that way.
That's not reality.
And so now it's become this joke that... okay, this is what we have. This is what mom expects. And that actually gets them more engaged than what I had planned of y'all just making fun of me. Right. And so now I'm this martyr on the altar of your laughter, I guess. But it is, like, I think that's one of the things that reality of, hey, we're really selfish when it comes to parenting because we do have this expectation. Yeah. And, like the way we want to see things go, and a lot of times it's for our own source of like confidence, self-esteem. Right. You know.
Now, I mean, if you've put an expectation out there, that's a little different. It's just those times that we have that expectation in our minds, like if I do this, they are 100% going to do this.
Yeah, I agree with you that. Like if we expect them to react a certain way, but then I think there's also like, can we really set an expectation of how they should respond to us?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I guess it's more having a conversation about
having a conversation. Yeah, and we've done that over the years of like, hey, you know, this is the way mom understands things. This is my language. This is the way dad understands things. And then we learn how our children receive things. And we have tried to have those conversations. Yeah. So we're not telling you that you have to do this, but if you care about the relationship, then this is kind of how to let somebody know that you appreciate it. And so we have done those things. So I think that might be what you mean about setting that expectation. This, like, I know one big thing for you is you don't mind giving almost anything that you have. You are very selfless when it comes to serving our family. But... Right. You don't just do that by being selfless. You want to be considered, and then you willingly give it.
Yeah. No, that's selfish.
And that's selfish.
That's totally selfish.
Yeah. But the truth is, like, that's
I want you to do something for me first, then I'll gladly give you anything. How warped is that?
I wasn't trying to bring light to that. I'm glad you did. But
I'm on camera. I have to make it okay.
Yeah, but
once again, not gods or gurus.
Yes. The truth is that we actually are all very fragmented. And that is something, like, even though it may be selfish, it is a way that you receive something. Right. And I do think that it is important to teach our children or those that, like we're imparting wisdom to, like into this upcoming generation, that relationship does mean, like, it's a kind of a two-way street. And if I love you enough, it's okay for me to meet you where you're at.
Yep.
Speak a language that you understand. I'm not talking about, like, our tongue language, but like speak in a way that you receive it.
Right.
And then you reciprocate that. I mean, I think there's something powerful to that.
Right. It's also kind of selfless, too, because you're like, I'm not just going to tell you the way I think you should figure it out. I want to consider you first.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think it is that fine line. I think we talk about a lot of things that are just a fine line. It's like, that can be seen very selfish as, I need you to consider me first, and then I'm willing to give it to you. But also, it's a great place of learning, right?
Yeah.
And it teaches us, like, how to be in relationship. But then the selfishness, like, it can start to fall away as we grow, because it's like, okay, I'm realizing now this is hindering that. But until we get to a place that it's like, okay, that's going to fall away, what we want to do in our family, with friends, just in life, is to give people that grace to
that's important,
kind of grow, right? And I think realizing that as parents that we can be selfish and not trying to hide that. I think that is the biggest thing. Like, when you try to hide that you're really selfish as a parent, and you're like this, oh my gosh, everything I do is for you.
Right.
It really, like, kind of chokes out some of your freedom to parent. I think we have to parent from this place of just being honest, of like, I'm selfish sometimes. We spend a lot of time telling our kids they're selfish.
Yeah, no, we do.
We do a lot.
Yeah.
How selfish you could be. You didn't even consider me. Or
right.
You didn't. Oh, wait a minute. You didn't consider me. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't see all the things that I did.
I just disciplined you because you were ungrateful about how it looked like, or what I did for you. And that, I think that's why parenting, like, we talk about this podcast being this lens. That's what we look through. See life as this lens of being a parent.
Yep.
But the crazy thing is, honestly, being a parent turns the lens back on us, where we see ourselves a little more clearly if we allow it to. And it can be hard at times.
Very hard.
But at the same time, it can be very freeing. I think we talked about in one of our other podcast about how I had to come to a place to realize there's some things I'm doing for me. Yeah. Like, and I have to be okay with that. If it's going back and straighten that kid's bed because they had too many wrinkles in it, then I've got to be okay with that and understand that's not on you, that's on me. This is what I want. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing with selfishness. And if we are able to share that with our child, or share that with our partner, or share that with a friend, of like, hey, I know this is real selfish right now, but this is where I'm at. Can we have this conversation? I think it goes a long way. So
100%.
So I don't know. Let's talk a little bit more about maybe like where we started in selfishness. Yeah. And then kind of like what it's taught us. Like, so we'll go back to you, since you were able to make fun of your example, and it's okay on camera. So I'm going to get it out while I can. Yeah. Like, realizing that, like, being considered before I give. Has that done anything inside of you, like, to realize that's really a selfish thing?
No, because I don't know if I realized it till just now.
Okay.
But I mean, it does. I mean, it shows me that, one, it does give me the freedom to kind of laugh at it or whatever. Okay. But at the same time, it shows me a little bit more about who I am, in a sense. And just a little bit more of what makes me tick. Right. And being able to, I guess also being able to, receive more grace for it, instead of like, hiding behind this veil of, hey, I just want to be considered. That's it. That's all I want you to do.
Yeah, like, it's such a little thing. I just
right.
be considered.
I'm doing this so that way you'll
Yeah.
understand me more. Like, I'm doing a favor for you.
Right.
Really, it is all for me,
Right.
in a sense.
Yeah, that's really true.
So, yeah, I guess that's kind of what that one does for me.
So I have one
Okay.
that I think most parents can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whether you have like small children, or you have teenagers, or you have them going into adulthood, or even if you have adult children, you can relate to this.
Man babies.
You can relate to this idea of creating maybe like a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And you need everybody to be on their best behavior, and there's no arguing, and there's no complaining, and everybody needs to be grateful.
Yep.
And honestly, it's not really so they can have a good time. It's so you can have a good time. So you can feel like, okay,
we're the perfect family. Look how much we're vacationing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know that so many years in the middle of that I realized that was really my unselfishness, my unwant. Like, hey, we're gonna sing these songs together, and we're gonna like it. We're gonna play this game, and we're gonna like it. Get off your phones. And there are times like those boundaries have to be in place because you're cultivating relationship. But sometimes it's like we're teaching our children that everything has to be right in order for us to label this as a good vacation.
Right. For it to
where
be a
I just
win.
want it peace. And coming from me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I've already divulged the idea, I like a clean house. I like things where they're supposed to be. I do go behind my children and pull their bed sheets tight. It's not anything on them. They can have loose bed sheets as adults. Whatever. It's fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
But so there is this personality type in me that's just this constant improver.
Right.
And so to see things done well, like, it's important to me. It's kind of like, I did it. It's a check mark.
Right.
But I think when it's like, okay, we're on vacation, and we've taught our kids, like, you have to behave, you have to do this, you can't complain. These are character traits we want to develop into adults.
Sure. Yeah.
But however, if it's what I'm harping on because I'm trying to keep everything perfect, I wonder, and we've talked to our kids about this, if we didn't set the stage for them to believe that everything has to go just so for it to be considered a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. And this may take us down a tangent, not necessarily about selfishness, but it is a fine line, too, of walking, because you want your kids to be grateful.
Yeah.
But in that moment, could you be grateful that, hey, everyone's just together? Because not every family's like that.
Right.
But if you do that, you're like, well, if I'm doing that, am I really lowering my standards?
Yeah.
Or am I just being grateful? Maybe that's another podcast we can talk about.
Yeah, but I do see what you're saying, because that really is, I'm so wrapped up in myself, I can't even see what's going well.
Right.
Because I had this expectation.
Yep.
I had this standard, and we didn't meet it. And so now it is all about I, instead of looking at what is going right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the reason we aren't grateful is because we're wrapped up in the selfishness.
That's true.
It did not go the way I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And that was good unison and not planned. So that was
totally
pretty good.
not scripted.
None of this is scripted, by the way.
No.
So
I have one.
Okay.
I know when I was a younger parent, one of the ideas that I had is, as a parent, I just could not get it wrong. And, that would shatter my kids' reality. They would not.
How did that work out?
It did not work out well at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
and it took a while. A lot of the conversations with you and things like that, I had to get to a point where, I kind of let that guard down. But what I realized is in that, because it was a selfish thing. I didn't want them to see me as weak or broken or have any kind of fault.
Right.
Because that would totally mess them up.
Right.
Really, it was more just protecting me and my own insecurity.
Yeah.
But in that selfishness, it kept them from seeing me being able to act in humility. So they weren't able to see what that looked like from their father. So my son, he would have never known what that looked like as a father himself, because he never got to see someone go, I didn't get that right.
Right.
And so I know that's one thing that it was a selfish thing for me. It wasn't like, hey, I'm doing this for you guys. It was really to protect myself.
Right,
So
yeah.
I didn't feel like a failure.
Right.
And things like that. But it did rob them for a while. I mean, I've worked on it now, and I can come back and say, hey, I messed things up. And I've seen that, in them be able to, kind of come to fruition or whatever, because they've been able to see it. And it gives them permission now to go, I don't have this impossible perfect standard I have to live up to in my parent, because that's a lot of times that's where our kids are going to get their standards from, is from us. So now they don't, hopefully save them from a bunch of condemnation of, living under, of trying to get it perfect.
Right, yeah.
Because I'm not getting it perfect because I'm not keeping it from them.
Yeah. I'm glad you went there, because the thing I was thinking about earlier was that idea of selfishness being self-preservation. I realized that not even in parenting, but in the way that I would be responsible for people and things. It was just a pattern of my life that if it had something to do with me, then I was going to be responsible for it, not because I deeply cared about the outcome. I deeply cared about how it impacted me.
Right.
And that really is that selfishness. A lot of times is self-preservation, because I want to protect myself. I want to, I want to be able to be in control about what comes in and out.
Right.
And, sometimes we can look at that as boundaries, but it's kind of a skewed idea of boundaries, because boundaries says, no, this is what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. But the way I was responding was, I'm going to do everything and take over everything that can impact me, instead of I'm just going to control how I respond and what I'm willing to do and not do.
Yeah.
And that, it can be very skewed, and it can wear you out, because, just as a person, you're getting worn out of, how am I going to parent? I'm parenting from a place of emptiness instead of overflow. And then also your children seeing, you are about everything. Everything becomes your responsibility. That can lead them to take on so much responsibility and live from a place of being super overwhelmed. And we haven't done this perfectly, but have caught, as we catch things, as we kind of undo some of the things that have been done in our background experiences, I think that we've tried to implement it into our parenting. And so we caught that, earlier, and have been able to talk to our kids about, hey, you're not responsible for somebody else's stuff. You've got to put up a boundary here and just be like, okay, I love you. This is what I'm willing to give, and this is what I'm not willing to give, and we don't have to have a big argument about it. It's just, here's the line. And sometimes that's hard to uphold, like we talked about in the other podcast about enabling versus love, and that's how that can get skewed.
Sure.
But I think when we operate from a place of boundaries versus just selfishness, things are different. They can look similar, but I think they're very different. Because that selfishness is about, I'm not really sure about kind of what's going to go on, and so I'm trying to control everything, and I'm trying to be everywhere, and it's about me. Where boundaries is really not just about yourself, but it's about others too. Because I know what I have to give, and I want to be strong enough. I want to be full enough to be able to pour out. And so this is just kind of what my limits are.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I think that, that's a good thing. So, let's talk about how we've talked a lot about our selfishness and how, parenting. We
can keep going probably too.
Yes, how parenting has kind of put a magnifying glass on that. But let's talk about parenting through that with our kids, how we've seen selfishness in our kids, and maybe what we've done, how we've dealt with that, both in wrong ways, and I don't know if we have any right ways.
Screaming was involved.
There's been some,
Screaming was involved?
There's been times, our kids have screamed at us, and we have,
trying to, one, get them to see where that it is, they're focused on themselves, and sometimes even that can be selfish on our end, because we're not really concerned about it's how it's going to make us look. That's when so our kids are acting selfish.
Yeah.
So that's another self-preservation thing.
Keeping your kid from screaming in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not supposed to be acting like this. Right. And the real motive is, I don't want people staring at me. Mm-hmm. Or at least that was mine. It might not be you guys, but that was
right.
But
I mean, it is and that could be for a lot of different things, but you're really thinking about it from your own, what it looks like for you.
Right, yeah.
Not necessarily, and as you get older and you start to work on things, then you can kind of see, this is really going to benefit them later on down the road, being able to think of others, for their relationships and things like that. So, I think right off the top of my head, the main one is trying to get them to see, and it hasn't always worked out the right way. Sometimes it can come across as just you're continually harping on it, but that would be my thing. What about you?
Well, I think parenting them through what we've seen selfishness in them, it definitely has been that kind of muddled path of what is really them being selfish and then what is their actions are rubbing up against me and it's bringing harm to me. And I think that's been the biggest thing of really trying to sort that out.
Yeah, that's
huge. And then when we do identify selfishness, one thing that I've tried not to do is to say you are selfish.
Yeah.
I think we've always tried not to say you are anything. We don't want to put a negative label
on them, yeah.
We have said, hey, your action seemed this way. And selfish is a word that I really have tried to stay away from.
Right.
Because it had been used in my life before and it kind of harmed me of hey, you're just selfish.
Yeah.
And me being a very given that's the way I saw myself, as this giving person. I'm giving and I'm taking everybody's responsibility.
So to hear that word selfish,
it's how could you? It was like a dagger. This scar in my life. But what I realized later is I was selfish, But at that moment, I just saw myself as very generous and very giving. But like I've already disclosed, is a lot of that was from selfishness. It was to protect myself.
Right.
And so I think just...
that whole I want you to see me seeing you?
Yes. And I think it... so for just parenting our children, it's been walking them through this idea that their actions might have harmed someone, and what were you thinking about in that?
Yeah.
And I know, with one of our kids, that particular kid has a quality that I had about caring so deeply for people.
Yeah.
And we've had to have those conversations. Are you caring about that person just because you care about that person? Or are you caring about that person because the way if that person fell out of your life or harmed you, the way it'd make you feel?
Yeah.
And I think that is just how we have kind of parented, of shedding a light on that we all operate from selfishness at some level, whether we want to admit it or not. At some level, we operate out of selfishness.
If you dig deep enough, a lot of times you're going to get to, this is something for me that I'm trying to do.
Exactly. But and then giving them this kind of other view that's being selfish is very heavy. Because it's a weight that we carry around, because we look at the world as it all has something to do about us and it's impacting us.
Wow,
and so it just becomes this heavy weight. And so selflessness is actually freedom.
Yep.
And I think, just telling them that, I remember one time coming to a realization myself about being enough. We talked about kind of the culture we grew up in very, very briefly, but about how some of the movies and TV shows that we watched, it was all about teenage dating, and there was this big, culture of dating, and if you had somebody in your life that made you valuable. And so that's what I grew up under, and there was always this thing in my mind that I wasn't enough.
Oh.
And it took me into adulthood of like, you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough. And I remember finally coming to terms with the fact that I actually am not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am not enough to fill the voids in people.
Right, yeah.
I'm worthy.
Yes.
I am loved. I am chosen.
Big
but enough,
yeah.
I'm not enough in terms of how I was defining it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, when we learn something, we take that to our children because we want to give them freedom before we, before they're, 40 or 50 or whatever. And I remember taking that to them and just saying, hey guys, I want to tell you something. Mm-hmm. Like, the world tells you have to be this, that, or whatever. And sometimes we can feel like we're not enough,
mm-hmm.
But the good news is you don't have to be.
Yeah.
And so take that as like almost this badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And that's okay because I'm loved, I'm worthy, I'm chosen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have to be enough.
Yeah.
And that's freedom. And that's the way I feel about selfishness versus selflessness. Selfishness is a huge weight because I'm always mindful of how things are impacting
mm-hmm.
me. Did they say that against me? Is that harming me? And it's always worried about how
it never shuts off.
Right. It is this
mm-hmm.
whole, that protection, that preservation. And selflessness is honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
mm-hmm.
matter if they thought that about me.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they were trying to be short with me. These things don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact that I haven't perfected it. I think one of our kids kind of is like, it doesn't matter. A lot of things doesn't matter. Sometimes to a fault.
Right.
And then we're watching another one like walk into that now. Like, I don't want to think through these things. I don't want to think about what's against me or whatever. I want to shift my mindset. And watching them be at much younger ages and start walking through that, that's like a hope.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, even from my own experience, I still have that. Was that against me? Why didn't they notice me? Why didn't
mm-hmm.
they say something? And that's heavy.
Right.
Like, and who wants to walk around with that all the time when you know better?
Right.
Like, it's not like I knew better and now that I'm knowing better, there's a lot of things you got to throw off.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, we had something that we could gift our kids, and now it's like, hey, we know better. We're giving this
mm-hmm.
to you.
Right.
And now you can walk around kind of lighter than we did.
Yeah. As I think, too, now, as we're talking, like, I think some of it, I don't know about all of it, but some of it, once again, not gods or gurus, some of it just can go back to where we place and find our value.
That's good, yeah.
Because a lot of times you're selfish because you're trying to get something.
Right,
or you feel something is owed to you.
Yeah.
And things like that, because and the only reason you feel like something is owed to you or you need something is because you're deficient.
Right.
You feel like you don't have the value that you need, so you try and get it from other places, or you feel it's owed to you or things like that.
Yeah.
Whether it be how the way people will react or what they're saying about you or how they see you and things like that. Whereas, coming from, like I said, we've always tried to parent and live from our faith, realizing that the love and acceptance that we have in Christ is the thing that grounds us and something that's never going to change.
Yeah.
And I've seen the more that I've kind of grasped onto that concept.
Yeah.
A lot less that I'm trying to get things from others. Not to say that it's fully realized, but I noticed the more I've kind of have done that, the less that I've had to try and get it from others and things like that. Too.
I feel like that carries us into another conversation. Maybe we'll do another
mm-hmm.
podcast.
Yep.
Is this idea of like being
mm-hmm.
like complete, like in Christ. And again, we do operate out of our faith. Mm-hmm. Not saying that you have to, but I do think at any level that we all want our children to mm-hmm. like be grounded. Yeah. Like you don't have to have anything from anybody like to be okay.
Yeah.
But then it's versus community. Like because we see this idea of scientifically, emotionally, all the things, how community benefits an individual. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's another one of those fine line things. And I think that's actually a really good one to kind of circle back to.
Yeah, let us know if you guys wanted to hear that conversation.
Yeah, circle back to another podcast, because you're right. We have, and it is the thing that helps the selfishness, is I'm not trying to get something from you.
Right.
I'm full. I'm complete.
Yeah.
I have abundance in myself, because what we believe is because of that sacrifice of Christ. Now I am full, and so my life is about pouring out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really is what we've tried to teach our kids. Again, fail at that a lot.
Yeah.
But when we do, we get up, we try to circle back and kind of rally around that.
And another thought, a little deeper layer to that I just thought of too is, we can be selfish because we don't feel like, others are going to consider us or think about us.
Value us. Yeah.
Are going to value us.
Yeah.
I know I can struggle with that as a parent with kids, with our kids.
Right.
Feeling like I have to, once again, let them know to consider me, because if I don't think they ever will.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it goes back to that self-protection, that self-preservation of, you're not going to do this the way I need you to do it, so I'm going to jump in and tell you how to do it.
Right.
And I think that does go back to, are we hindering their development?
Yeah. No, I'm sure I have in some way, shape, or form.
Obviously say, hey, this is how I receive things or understand things, but once you've shared that with them, then start letting them kind of make the steps towards exercising that. I read somewhere from one of the parenting experts, because
it's
we're
not
that when we do the things for our children, it teaches them that they're not equipped to do it themselves.
Wow.
And so I've probably messed that up a lot, but at whatever time we have, we talked about 18 doesn't have to be the magic number.
Right.
We still do have that influence in their life for many years to come, especially when we're paying college bills. And so I think that is like this big deal of, it's okay to say in a relationship, because we're teaching them this parent-child relationship. Yeah. So this authority, and you kind of, are under a certain authority, but we're moving them from this, Dr. Henry Cloud calls it this one up, one down relationship to like you're equal. We work side by side. And so we're moving them from that. And so giving them the responsibility to, like, if you want this relationship to go good, if you want this to, then nurture it. Yep. Like, there are things that you're responsible to in this relationship.
Let them take a hand in it.
Right. So,
yeah.
I feel like that kind of wraps up my thoughts on this selfishness.
I think so. Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Go ahead and put those in the comments.
Do you feel like parenting is a magnifying glass? Like, it's just shown all of your flaws, like, especially that selfishness? Have you found yourself wanting the perfect family vacation, not so much to make memories, but
please share some stories.
So we don't feel like we're alone.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But definitely keep the conversation going. We'd love to hear about it. And until then, we'll see you next time. Cue the music.
2 parents and a microphone.